All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Candid Cox Cast, where we basically talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to coxing and rowing. So today we have our second installment of the second part of the rivalry series, the Oxford versus Cambridge series, which is super fun. These guys definitely brought it today. I'm so impressed with the sets, the props, and all of the stories and everything that you guys have.
Well, I'm gonna stop you there, Whitney. The props. there's no props on display.
Okay.
This is all
I stand corrected.
authentic.
I stand corrected. Yes. The authentic, historic pieces that you've brought to the table.
Vas certainly likes to be reminded all the time about the weight of history that is the Oxford Cambridge boat race.
Yeah.
And I want to hear all about that in just a minute. Every day.
Just before we continue, you mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly. So which one of us is the ugly? Because there's three of us.
It's a good question, Vas.
I've been told that we're not too bad ourselves. So, maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, it's me. It's me. You guys are all the good. Yeah.
No, you can't fall on your sword like that, Whitney. I mean, we've all seen Vas's technique on a Wednesday night. I would say that's pretty ugly.
But depends what kind of sword you're talking about.
Well, I didn't want to be the one to say it. I didn't want to hurt his feelings right off the bat, but
we can talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So with us today, Ollie, Vas, and Josh. Obviously, without further ado, we've already started talking a little bit about some of this stuff, but if you don't mind, give the listeners a little bit of background, because between the three of you, honestly, your accomplishments, medals, achievements, races, and everything is pretty astounding. So that could be a podcast in itself, but give us a little bit of background about who you are and what you're up to, and then we'll dive right into the reason that we came today to talk about the boat race. So, Ollie, go ahead.
Oh, put me on the spot. Well, I was in the boat race with Vas and Bug in 2017, and I did a master's at Oxford. It was unfortunately only a year long. I would love for it to be a bit longer, but otherwise, I've spent that kind of interrupted 2 Olympic cycles I've spent in the GB team. So I was in the Olympic team for the run up to Rio, but then I was the sort of the non-traveling spare for those games. Then I went to Oxford, and now I'm in the team now for the last 4 years. So I've kind of spent a decent chunk, I suppose, in the GB team, but it's kind of buttressed in the middle is a great year I spent at Oxford. All right, Bug, over to you.
Perfect.
Well, I started rowing when I was at Cardiff Uni, when I was a bit older than most of the other guys started. I was 20. Spent a few years there rowing, went to Leander, and then moved to Oxford, studied a master's bioresearch in oncology. I did 2 boat races, a losing one, a winning one, and then nearly did one more, and then that didn't end up coming to anything. And now I'm in the GB rowing team with Ollie, and got a medal last year at the World Championships. Unfortunately, there won't be any racing this year, but I'm spending most of it on the bike anyway. I'm a bit injured at the moment, and fingers crossed next year will go well. And I'll pass over to Vas.
Thank you, Josh. I'm actually still doing a PhD at Oxford. So I started in 2016. Still going. Doesn't look like I'll be finishing too soon, so I can enjoy the next 6 months or so. Actually, before I came to Oxford, I was actually at Boston University. So unlike the other two, I studied in America. So I kind of had that really good kind of American collegiate experience, which was very different. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later.
Perfect. And so with such a diverse background, Vas, like getting to row in the US, why choose Oxford? What was it about Oxford that made you guys say, I want to go there, as opposed to Cambridge or somewhere else?
Well, first of all, it's not clinically insane. I mean, it was just get that out there.
Yeah, I think the choice is always fairly obvious. I think we'll all agree on that one.
Fair, but I have to ask. So,
how much time have you got?
give us the brief version.
I think Oxford. I think for me, I grew up quite close by to Oxford, so I always got to watch the boat race. And I think my first one that I watched was in 2007 or 2006, and I had also been in Athens when the Olympics were going on, and I saw that Vincent won gold medal, and he actually went to Oxford as well. So I think we kind of, I at least felt like I was growing up with the boat race, and it was always this like goal that I never thought I'd actually end up doing, but always seemed like something that was kind of like an end goal that would kind of top things off for me. So yeah, I wouldn't say like it was planned. It just kind of happens. I think as life goes on, you kind of set yourself new goals and new opportunities kind of arise. So I think it happened quite naturally, I'd say.
Yeah. What about you guys, Ollie and Josh?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a part of the reason was just because they had a course on offer that that really kind of suited my background as a pharmacist from Cardiff. And also, I think on the rowing side, I was really attracted to the program. It'd been a very successful program for a number of years when I was coming into it. So I was very keen to kind of be part of that. And I'd heard a lot about how Sean could develop rowers, kind of maybe big guys like myself who weren't at the time very skillful on the water, and kind of turn them into something that could, I don't know, move a boat a little bit. So it seems to have pulled off just about. I'm not sure what all these reasons were, though.
Definitely, no, that's for sure. Yeah, I think maybe even a mix of both of Vas and Bug. For me, I went to school with Vas. I was a few years older than Vasi, but in a very similar way, I think I kind of really grew up with the boat race always being a big kind of staple of the rowing calendar in the UK. And everybody looks to the boat race as a sort of, it's not the Olympic team, but in many ways you kind of follow their journey even more kind of closely, especially as a schoolboy rower. And then actually the guy that wrote this book, Dan Topolsky, who unfortunately died a few years ago now. He was a bit of a hero of mine at school. He kind of did loads of really cool things, and he raced in the boat race in the 60s, and he came to our school and gave a talk. I think must have been 2006 or something, and he signed a book and said, "Dear Ollie, I hope to see you at Oxford one day." And I remember thinking, "Oh, really? Maybe that could be on the cards, maybe." So it was always on the horizon, and then rowing kind of took a more serious turn after my undergrad days. But I kind of always had it in the back of my mind that if I got the chance, it would be a great thing to do.
That's really neat. And so what did you find once you got there were some of the differences in international training and Vas, maybe even between BU and this? Like what sort of stands out, or what makes it so different training in a squad like this, besides the short amount of time that you have to train?
I thought, first off, there was a huge emphasis in America on kind of your outside activities outside of rowing. So you'd have to really perform well. There'll be a huge emphasis on academic work, a huge emphasis on kind of team cohesion outside of the boathouse. But actually, I felt at Oxford, you get treated a little bit more like an older individual, with a little bit more maturity. I think, especially in 2017, we did have a little bit of an older team that had been through the mill a bit. And in particular, I found that, it was just, you come down to training and you do your training and then you leave. And, there wasn't that much focus on, doing certain activities or doing stuff like that outside of what we had organized ourselves. So that was, for me, really different. And actually, the training itself was also really different. America, you get used to slogging each other every single day, doing pieces. I remember there was one session at BU that we did a lot, which was something like 2500s with 20 seconds rest. And I remember going to Oxford and doing just very steady state training and not too much interval training. So I actually almost found it like easy for some days. But it was nice. It was more methodical, a little bit more science behind the training, and it really helped me step on.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. Even spending time at Leander, Like the difference, like obviously I grew up in the American system and it's very different. It's very, very different. So yeah, I definitely relate to that. Yeah. What about you guys, Josh and Ollie?
I mean, I found the training at Oxford compared to anything I was doing, because the clubs I was at before were kind of semi-mimicked the GB training program to an extent. And I think going into Oxford, a lot of the focus was on controlling the intensity of what we were doing all the time. And there was a lot of science involved, a lot of input from the physiologist, Philippe. And also, I think because the focus is on such a long race, there was less focus on things like weightlifting and more on just developing like endurance, which was, I think, one of the key differences. I think if the program was to be applied to shorter racing, I think maybe there would be a bit more weights involved, a little bit more like short, like fast, high pace stuff. But yeah, I think the program is suited to what the end goal is really. I'm not sure. I'm sure Ollie might have his take on it as well.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. I think I think because when you're at Oxford, you're also doing a full-time course. That balance has got to be there, and the university and typically the courses, they don't really give you much leeway, and in some cases, not always true, but you've almost got to kind of really show that your training's not holding you back, kind of in the kind of what you're doing in the course. So and I think that approach means, a bit like what Vas is saying, there's a little bit more responsibility given to the athletes in their approach to the training. There's a little bit more kind of a bit of space to be able to take a session lighter if you need to, or step it on a little bit more if you want to. But I certainly found that I really like that responsibility that the program with Sean and his team that they give you. They very much about kind of you as an athlete and how do you develop yourself. And so they kind of give you a lot of tools to think about the training. They give you sort of explanations about what the profile they're looking for, why they're doing this, why they're doing that, and they're certainly not afraid. And in fact, they welcome questions about why we're doing this, like what and they encourage that kind of dialogue between the athlete and the coach, and I think that's something which I think is really good. And I think maybe sort of they do it a lot of different places, a little bit at Caversham, but I mean not to the same extent at Oxford.
Yeah, so it sounds like they kind of allow you to meet them halfway in a way, like based on what your workload is, and so they sort of allow you the flexibility, which in turn would make you want to step it up a little bit and give more to the program, I would think.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, not the coaches don't always like to be asked. I think Bugs definitely understand that one. But I think that they appreciate that the guys they've got are very intelligent, they're very thoughtful, and they respect that. And because of that, you feel quite empowered to take responsibility about your own training, and I think that's a good thing.
I think one of the key things as well is that I was going to say, because some of the athletes coming in are like 18-year-old freshmen in their undergrad, and some are kind of touching 30 or older. Some have international experience stretching back 12 years. Some have had a few years of schoolboy rowing. So it's kind of, I think they have to do a lot of assessing of the program constantly to make sure that it's kind of fitting all the different types of people who are involved in it, because they've got a fresh crop most years, so they've got to kind of like react fast to find out how it's actually fitting each person. It's not like an international team where you've got the same people year on year most of the time between an Olympiad, so you can you have an idea of how they all kind of react to a program. So it's very fast paced, and it's a lot of assessment, I guess, of both the program and the rowers.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be an incredible challenge when you have people of all ages, all backgrounds. A lot of people, I think, don't have an insight into how this works. I mean, especially here in the US, a lot of people know the boat race. Even non-rowers know what the boat race is, but that's about it. You find out who wins, you've heard of it, but how are you actually selected? Like there's a process that you guys have to go through that's pretty compact, because you just don't have that much time really train for it. Like you kind of hit the ground running pretty quickly. So what's the process once you all arrive, you've got the pool of guys, how do you start to feel out who's going to be in what boat?
Vass, you want to take that? You've done a few seasons now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is a shorter season, and I think things are compressed. We try and usually select within the first kind of half of the year, I'd say. But I wouldn't say there isn't any particular defining moment. I'd say it's like a gradual process of proving yourself day in, day out, but also kind of showing that you're improving at the same time. I think the coaches kind of see if you're on a trajectory, they'll factor that into the selection process. So it's not necessarily like 1 or 2 seat races. I mean, of course, those matter. But I think it's just generally like, do you fit in with the guys? Because you have to think about that. Everyone's coming in from different backgrounds. Like Josh said, you have a lot of guys that have international and some that don't. So one, you have to be really flexible, show that you can improve over time and mesh in with the guys around you. So it's a very different selection process. I'll say in the US, going back to my experience there, I found that it was like, you know, those 1 or 2 seat races or that ergo score. If you pulled a huge ergo, they'd probably put you in the boat. Whereas at Oxford, Sean kind of collates all the information and, you know, determines based on his own thoughts and also the data. So it's kind of like it's a very broad approach that I think works for something like the boat race.
Yeah, I mean that selection process it seems so interesting, and I totally forgot that you guys rode with Mike DeSanto.
Oh
right?
yeah, we were remote.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
know Mike, Whitney?
Yeah, I coxed him out at the training center, like the US training center.
Oh, well, can we have another separate podcast we chat about with Mikey? We chat about that would be awesome.
He's so great. He's so great. We should.
He was the president actually of the boat race we all won, so he did a very good job that year, to be fair.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah,
He's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy. 2017, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the big one. Yeah, that's
okay,
marked
perfect.
indelibly on everyone's memories.
Oh, of course. Books have been and will be written about it. So how do you guys choose coxswains?
Yeah, I think year on year, the intake we have with cox is it's really variable. Sometimes we've got years when people come in with tons of experience and they stand out initially as like a very strong candidate. Some years you have a more kind of like a younger group of people. There's usually several coxes who do trial for the boat. And I guess it's kind of over a period of time of using. So we've got Fours Head, which we race, which is on the Tideway, the reverse of the championship course. We'll do trial 8s where we set up 2 boats, like equally matched boats of Oxford crews, well, 2 Oxford crews, who all go off against each other. And there are kind of like we spend quite a bit of time on the Tideway, and I guess there's a lot of time to kind of assess which coxes do the best on the course. And I think because the Tideway is such a complex place to cox, I think it really does, like, it becomes quite clear after a while who the best coxes are. Like, some of them really kind of get it, and sometimes some just don't quite pick it up as fast as the others. So I think that kind of helps select who's going to work and who won't.
Oh yeah,
Pretty much the same.
That's right. Yeah, we have I think there's probably, as Josh laid out, there's a series of quite formal assessments, I suppose, and they're quite high stakes. You know, you don't get a lot of time to practice racing on the Tideway, and essentially there's 3 there's a Fours Head, there's trial 8s, and then there's some fixtures which they'll try and be on. But you know, it's not much really to get practice. So it is quite hard for a cox to come in who maybe hasn't had at least Tideway experience to then do it. But there's been also lots of examples where coxes have. It just takes, I think, a cox that's very switched on, and also a cox, in my impression, that can take feedback well. That's usually someone as a cox who will be successful.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. I remember just a few weeks in being at Leander even, and we started doing the fixtures.
I think if we had heard that the other boat had a cox who'd never coxed the Tideway before, I think you'd be in trouble.
I think so. I mean, it's fair. I'd have to give it to you. It's totally fair. So we learned that we got to spend a lot more time on it, and certainly, did Eight's Head and everything. So we definitely learned in practice. But tell us a little bit about what it's like. You guys spent so much time on it, and the tideway is really its own animal, like it's got a personality, I think. What do you guys think? You spent so much time on it.
Oh yeah. No,
like, what are some of the
definitely.
things that go on?
I did my undergrad at the University of London, so we spent the whole time on the tideway. It's a tidal river, so it's it can be, I don't even know how wide it can be when it's on full flood, and then it can be this relatively small stream when it's completely when it's a low tide, and also there's not much stream coming down. But it's I think every river, particularly a river that's gets to the point where it's affected by tide, there's a lot going on, and just the relative different speeds. If you were to drop like a stick into the water at different parts on the same like cross section of the river, they'll be going dramatically different speeds. So knowing where that is likely to be, no one knows where exactly it is all the time. But knowing roughly where it is and also where it's the slowest is a massive advantage. And because the river is so wide and there's a lot of things going on there, it's really effective. It's very twisty as well, as everybody knows, get affected by wind a lot. So the conditions in one session, one outing, can be very, very different throughout the session, and that is quite fun. I think I always find that crews that have only ever rowed really flat water will really struggle when they get to the tideway or get to any river that's got all those different factors in. But crews that have maybe trained on that, you'll find they've got like a natural like sort of springiness or suspension that's able to absorb all the different conditions as they row along. But no, it's a real beast. But from what I gather, so is the Charles near Boston, which Vas knows a lot about as well.
It can be.
Yeah.
It certainly can be. And by the way, when you say high tide, like the tides are variable, we mean like over the roads, like flooding the streets.
Yeah.
So how do you break up such a long race with so many variables in it to actually come up with some sort of a race plan?
Well, I think a lot of that's we spend a lot of time watching videos of previous races. So if you kind of go through all the archives of the last kind of 20, 30 years of broadcast races, you kind of pretty much pick out roughly every kind of condition you're gonna face. I mean, the one unique thing about the boat race is that the race will pretty much go ahead regardless of what the conditions are. Most races which have multiple crews, there isn't enough safety cover so that you could literally go out in sinking conditions and usually postpone a race for if it was high winds or incredibly heavy rain. But in the boat race, it will literally go ahead at the allotted start time. I remember in 2016, the Cambridge women's boat pretty much was almost sunk. If it wasn't for the electric pumps inside the boat, it would have sunk that year. But yeah, I think we go through pretty much every scenario we can envisage, and it can. And once again, using the 2016 race as an example, in the women's race beforehand, if you watch it back, you notice the boats cut one of the corners, which is unusual because usually you follow the fastest line through the middle of the river, and that year the wind was so strong that actually it was faster to cut the corner and avoid the wind. And like if I was racing, I think it was an hour after that, and kind of like with hindsight, maybe we would have cut the corner as well. It's just one of those things. You can't really plan for everything.
And that was Morgan, wasn't it? Morgan Bainham Williams.
Yeah,
that was
exactly. Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. She's actually going to be on the show next week. And do you break it up bridge to bridge? Do you break it up by time? How do you break that up?
That's when bringing out a book like this really helps during mid-race.
Do a chapter for each part of the race.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dry monotone.
Okay.
No, so I'd say it's very different for a cox versus a rower. I mean, it always comes to the race where the rower has a very probably different experience than the cox does, because the cox has to practice and react to certain race kind of sort of situations. But I felt like with a rower, I don't know, I'm sure the other guys, I think they felt the same during the race, but you basically try to go as hard as you can for for as long as you can. And if you want to keep going, then you're probably going to win, and if you don't, then you're probably going to lose. And it's not that simple. But with the Cox, I'd say that he or she has to really be aware of what's going on with the race and where they are in the race. Also be aware of the calls that the crew will respond to. So in that way, actually, it is seriously meticulous, because they have to be really aware of the situation. Whereas with a rower, I'm sure, Ollie had that in the 3 seat. You just put your head down and you go until there isn't anything more.
What do you say about the 3 seat there?
Nothing at all.
It's the most technical and also strongest position to be in. But I mean, but again, it varies. Different positions in the boat have to think about different things, right? So
I think Cox has got to know their crew really well, really, really well. And that only comes, I think, with time and kind of really paying attention to what's going on. And the rowers, sort of the aim is, as Vas said, is kind of like to go as fast as you can over the whole stretch. And of course, you can't go in a short sprint the whole way, but you're essentially on the higher cadence as you can possibly. And so the Cox's job in devising a race plan is to be able to have a plan that is able to keep the rowers on that cadence for as best as possible. So to be able to have a sort of technical calls maybe at a certain place that it increases the rhythm or enhances the rhythm. Maybe know the individuals in the boat who maybe their tendency will be to do something, like maybe just get a bit late or to overpower it. And so as a Cox, you've got to really know that kind of the rhythm of your boat, if that makes sense, and devise a race plan that suits your boat the best over what you're trying to achieve, whether it's a 1K race, 2K race, or it's a boat race. But a little bit like no plan survives first contact with the enemy. At the end of the day, your job is to beat the other crew, and so you've got to know what's in your armory, and I think being able to, as a Cox, be able to employ those. So we knew we had a good start. We didn't know how quick Cambridge would start, but we knew that if we concentrated on our start, played to our strength, then they would have to be going quickly to be with us. So we put that down on the table, and then it comes up to the first corner, and we know that if we're pressing into a good rhythm and they start drawing, they're going to be working harder than us, most likely. And then when the time comes, the Cox knows the call, and then we all commit to that, and we break them. And I think that, so in a way, you've always got a race plan, but you've also got to race who you're racing, and that's probably the most important thing. I actually remember watching the Cambridge fixture in 2016, and they were racing Brooks, and Brooks shot off to a massive lead. I think it had about length clear water, and then Cambridge rode them down and rode away. And I do remember thinking then that you need to also while racing like crew, you need to be very internal. You need to be doing the thing that's going to make your boat the fastest, not necessarily like just racing, but doing the thing that's going to make your boat go the fastest.
And talk a little bit about what these boats are like, because I also think a lot of people don't understand that these boats are not just MPOCers. They're kind of built like tanks, right? They have a lot of extra features, and they're built a little bit differently than normal shells.
Well, we had to. Is this right? We had to reinforce the 4 seat. I can't remember who was there.
You're being way too kind, Ollie.
Yeah.
It's not like you can compliment me. I was doing something right or very wrong.
No, the backstay. It could be very wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if I ever damaged my backstay. I think there was someone else behind me that managed to break theirs in a training session a week or so before the boat race.
Yeah, I couldn't withstand the pressure.
If I remember correctly.
I think we both did it.
I caught a crab, didn't I? We did one.
You did.
We went the week before the boat race, and it was against ISIS, and it was quite a full-blooded sort of internal race, because it was probably going to be the last time we were going to race each other, and and it was rate capped, but I think ISIS were allowed to go a couple of pips higher or something. There was something slightly. Anyway, they were half a length ahead, and we were coming back through them, and right under the bridge, just as we were kind of drawing level, I catch a crab, and they row off, and I'm smarting and hoping that I won't do that on the race day. I was very nervous about catching a crab, actually.
I think I caught one.
You weren't the only one, I think, in that fortnight, I think, who caught a crab. I think I'm pretty sure there was someone else.
I caught a huge one. I destroyed the rig at Caversham. But yeah, I think in regards to the boats, I think Josh can probably talk about having larger implements in certain situations. So maybe Josh, you can talk us through kind of what's larger in the boat.
Well, the sax boards are raised. I think they're about 2 or 3 inches higher. But that 2 or 3 inches counts for a lot. Like it really stops the waves getting in. We have electric pumps. I think there's usually 4 pumps put throughout the boat. And I can't remember what rate they chuck water out the boat. I think it's like 100 liters per minute. So I think per pump, if I'm correct. So 400 liters per minute being pumped out of the boat. I mean, that's we've kind of upgraded the pumps over the years. I think they weren't as good 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I mean, so when you have the scenarios where we have tons and tons of water coming in the boat, and it really, like, if you think of sometimes your footwell will fill up suddenly after a wave, and you think already that's 8 footwells throughout the boat. That's probably a few hundred liters. So a couple of 100 kilos if you've got a couple of 100 liters in the boat, which is equivalent of having 2 big men extra in the boat, not doing anything, just sloshing around. So those electric pumps count for a lot.
I know that Brooks get super triggered that we have pumps. So if any Brooks boys are watching this,
they have sponges.
They have sponges, which I think are more effective, to be honest. So they have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, exactly. Get back in their box.
Yeah.
And you guys still have the coolest camera rigs ever for the sterns. Those things are so cool.
They put them on. I think it's a few days before the race. They put them all on, and I think it's when that goes on that you realise that it's boat race time and how important the whole thing is. I remember my first year when it happened, it was just that was the moment that you kind of realise how big the event was. I don't know why.
And what are the?
That's true.
But kind of not. It's kind of like it makes it real for sure. And so,
it's one of the few occasions you see a big camera on a boat for an event.
Yeah. And so, what do the few days before the race actually look like? I mean, are you guys training very much? Are you just like relaxing a little bit? Are you staying out of the limelight? Are you doing interviews? Like, what do those few days look like?
Sean likes to work us pretty hard up to the day. So we typically do a couple of 20Ks, maybe the day before. So a couple of loops of the boat race course. No, I'm joking. Can't do that. That would be funny.
Like, wow.
No, okay, so what do we?
I'm trying to figure out where that was going.
Yeah, if anyone came into this thing, we just train really hard right up until in fact the warm up. We do 2 loops of the tideway course actually just before the race. The few days before, I think it's you've got to keep the sessions very very focused, and they're really exciting. It's really, really fun time actually. The last week you have the kind of alumni group always hire out one of these really nice boats that follows the crews around, and so even on the last week before that, one of those sessions during the day will be followed by one of these launches with some guys who've come down to watch the race, and some of them might be quite old, some of them have recently left. So it's a really nice sort of atmosphere, and also we all have moved into our home that we live in during that week, during Tideway week, and it is just a really, really fun time. The sessions get a little bit shorter, but they get a little bit snappier and a little bit more a little bit sharper, and you see Cambridge are out training every day, and from what I remember, I just wanted to race them every day. I as soon as I saw them, I would have happily raced them every day in whatever capacity.
I remember, in fact, that year, I remember once when we did the practice starts, we accidentally lined up next to them.
Yeah,
on
Yeah.
the.
that's true. That's
Wasn't
true.
accidental, was it, Josh?
Oh my god, I remember.
I think we were a little bit
Lance.
early for our allotted time.
No, I could have definitely raced him at that moment. Oh yeah.
And so do you guys have any traditions that you do either before or after the race?
The night before
After?
is usually a pretty huge time for us as a crew. We actually managed to duplicate the keys for Crabtree, and so basically, yeah, we managed to duplicate the keys for Crabtree, where basically that's where Cambridge keep their boat. And about 11 o'clock, we went into the boathouse, and we actually took their boat out and went for a row in their boat the day before the race, which was pretty huge for us. Oh, and actually, she's just left. So, all right, so let's talk about real stuff right now, Ollie.
That was such a big reveal.
Yeah, she couldn't handle it, so she had to leave. So, okay, how about I interview you guys?
Wait, where's my phone? We need to take a photo. Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, you missed the big reveal. Which part did you miss? Did you talk about the shower scene?
I missed the good stuff.
Oh, you missed that.
you missed that. Oh, I don't believe that at all. You missed that.
Oh.
Oh, the Mexican wave.
Yeah.
It's a technical drill that Sean likes to run with us.
Sorry,
Okay.
Ollie, just to expand a little bit more on the Mexican wave. What do you mean by, the Mexican wave? Is that something that your body has to kind of prepare for, or how does it work?
The biggest key message I think that we try and reiterate is that with timing. So us kind of as a bit of a mantra, we go always be in time, no matter kind of who you are, what you're doing, you're in time with the rest of the guys. So we practice our Mexican waves as a full body movement, and it requires flicking, it requires everything, and it's just good to, I think, use that as a drill on the land. So we try to do that together, and sometimes Sean will watch us and he'll make sure that we're doing it properly in time, start to finish.
We also take a team photo as well. That's one of our nice traditions. All
Perfect.
in our Oxford jumpers.
And so
Yeah.
what is it like sitting on the starting line? What is the mood? Are you guys a little bit more of a lighthearted crew? Are things very serious, very internal? What is the mood when you're sitting there surrounded by the crowds?
We're a deadly serious crew, out for one
Seems like
mission
it.
and one mission only, to have as much fun as possible. No, I mean,
I don't believe that for a second.
It is. It's a very cool. Everyone who's listening, it is a really, I think, unique in many ways experience, and it is really, really cool. The boat race is a big deal for Londoners, and so a lot of people in London come to watch, and it's on TV, and so you get a sense of this like build up towards it, and then you row out to the start line, and there's loads of people around. I mean, there's loads of people. Most people are drinking and not paying attention, but there's a huge buzz, which is awesome, and lots of your friends are there, and then you're on the start line, and I think there may have been 2 helicopters flying ahead, and one of them you can see on your eyesight, and then there's one right up ahead, and then the bridge, the Putney Bridge, which is right in front of you, is lined with people, and then there's a big boat on your right, and that's also full of people, so it's really loud, and but I remember, I think we were very well drilled, and we were all really looking forward to the race, really looking forward to it. So I remember sitting on the start line, and it was just a great feeling. There was a little bit of I think something floated in the river. I think it was a little rubbish bag, just as we were about to come forward and start. And I think I remember Vas looking around, and we saw it, we bagged up, and we just sort of relaxed again. It didn't matter. We didn't need to. We didn't need to be really tense and ready. I think we just were so looking forward to the race, so looking forward to that very first stroke against Cambridge. I mean, I can speak for all of us. We were desperate to race, and I think that meant that the start line was just a very exciting kind of about time sort of feeling, which was great.
I'll admit, I was a bit different, I think. So normally I don't really get I don't particularly get nerves before races, and that's whether it's an international race or most regattas or whatever. I remember my first boat race in 2016, we were underdogs, and I was completely naive to kind of what was about to happen. And I think I maybe didn't have it was more the excitement and less of the nerves. And it was just give it a go, like do what we've been planning to do and all that kind of stuff. That year, the conditions were horrible. And I think that kind of took more of a toll than we expected. But in 2017, because we were going into it as favourites and I'd done it before and I knew what the pain of losing meant. Actually, I think the most nervous I've ever been before a race. And I don't think I've ever been that nervous since either.
Yeah, I actually felt probably more similar to Ollie, and I understand where Josh is coming from, having done the race before, and I think his experience really helped us drive things on the last few weeks and actually during the whole season as a whole. But I felt almost robotic. You kind of go into the kind of really subconscious movements, and you kind of feel really relaxed, almost like it's a bit of like a dream, I'd say. I know it sounds really strange, but I think when you've been preparing for something your whole life, it feels like, or at least a couple of years, it feels like a dream, and you just kind of almost going through kind of these robotic motions that you've been practicing before. But yeah, it was completely surreal. I felt like in 2017 I was very good at blocking out distractions on the day, because there are a lot of people shouting at you, wanting you to win, wanting you to lose, saying all sorts of stuff, but you just have to kind of put the blinders on and just go.
How do you defend your legacy on the starting line like that? I mean, it's a big question, but the rivalry there is kind of what makes this exciting.
It's a really weird one, actually. I mean, we always keep it, I think, very civil, because obviously when we're down on the Tideway, we're right next door to where Cambridge is training, so we do see them. We're all going for coffees at the same place. We're usually getting our lunchtime snacks at the same place. I think the squads always keep it, I think, very civil, but I think there is always that like underlying competitiveness, that underlying rivalry. I think I'm sure Cambridge is the same, but I think we definitely kind of feed off it a bit.
I mean, is it present day to day? Are you looking around your boathouse and seeing all of these names that of guys that have done it before, won before? Like, how are you reminded day to day that we're here to beat these guys?
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's it's totally kind of embedded in what the boat race is about. But I think, maybe picking up a little bit on what Josh was saying about being on the start line. My brother was in the boat with us in 2017, and his first race was 2015, and he won that, and it was a sort of really cool race. They seemed to sort of walk away, and it just sort of everything kind of came together. And but I was on training camp, so I missed it. I watched the race, but I wasn't able to be there. But the following year, I watched his race with Josh in Westminster Boathouse, which is where we kind of are based when we're on the Tideway, and watched on a big TV. And I remember Cambridge rowing away, and I just felt really cold. And the room goes quiet. You realize that you're kind of like, it's probably inevitable now. You're still cheering for Oxford a little bit, but you sort of know. And then Cambridge crossed the line, and Lance went like this. And at that moment, and I found out I'd got into Oxford the week before. At that moment, then I was not going to lose that race. I mean, I was going to Oxford to win and to make sure that I don't know, I suppose a little bit avenged that. And I watched that race a few times. It definitely, for me, it was a big deal. And the funny thing is the following day after the boat race, I flew to training camp for a GB training camp. I had 2 weeks later after that, I was racing GB trials in a pair, and my pairs partner was Lance. So the following day we arrived at the airport together. I hadn't slept. I'd been up all night. Lance had an early night, was clean shaven with all his kit prepared, whereas I was still in my dinner jacket and had just chucked stuff into a bag. But immediately we hugged, and we were really good friends. And we'd raced together before. We'd won Henley together before. We'd done all these things before. So it wasn't him. It was just for those sort of 18 months, for that year, for that 12 months, they were in my crosshairs, and it was about beating them.
That's so cool. I think that's the beauty of our sport too. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone just wants to go have a beer together at the beer garden and have a good race.
Yeah.
No, I'll say that. Yeah, I raced a bit against Pat, who was I think he stroked the USA 8 after
Pat Ebel, right?
Yeah, Pat Ebel. So I raced against him when he was at Princeton and I was at BU. So we had like a bit of an underlying kind of friendship there. But I'll say that, we at the same time you have to respect your enemy, but not too much, and you have to not fear them at the same time. And I felt like we did that. Like guys like Lancer, I think are absolutely really great guys, and I think complete gentlemen. I don't have anything bad to say to them. But during the season, you have to, they're trying to take your dream away from you, and you have to build that up in your head that that's what they're trying to do, and you're trying to stop them from doing that. I'll say that thing's probably, I think a story that comes out of my mind is probably the weigh-in. I think the weigh-in gets pretty heated, and I had a bit of a had a jolly good time with my opposite man, and I think it's good though. You got to build it up, and I think there are some points in the season I'd say that it probably comes out, but you got to try and use that for the race.
Ollie, you might have undersold the strength of brotherly love in terms of the outcome of a race. I remember you mentioning a while ago. So one of the defining moments of our race was, I think it was a point just before Hammersmith Bridge where we were maybe 3/4 of a length up on Cambridge, and the boats had kind of come together. And Jamie was sat in the 7th seat, and his blade was starting to clash. And I mean, the crew's reaction to the call from Sam in the coxswain seat was to kind of push on. But I think, if I remember rightly, you mentioned that you may have pushed extra hard because it was your brother who was receiving a bit of a battering on his blade, and that was the moment where we pulled away, and we pulled away in quite a way at that point. So I guess in a way, that little,
say that I regretted it.
A little moment of brotherly love might have won us the boat race.
Immediately afterwards, because well, I've only touched. Oh my! I can still feel it now. It was at Freddie Davidson's blade and hit, and I mean, I don't know whether I can swear on this thing, but I mean, I was ready to draw blood, and no, I certainly we did our push there, and I felt like a hero actually, and I think we all dug in pretty hard there. But yeah, for the rest of the race, it's no exaggeration to say I was hanging on. I was very, very much hanging on.
We can all feel that.
yeah. No, probably everyone else probably picked up the slack at that point after that.
Well, before I go into the last two questions, because I have a couple more things I want to know from you guys, I have a few trivia questions I'd like to ask you about the boat race. So I also am going to ask Cambridge these questions. So we're going to see who knows a little bit more about the race. So without further ado, let's see. What year and where was the first boat race held, and who won?
Oh, I want to say 1828. 1829.
It would have been I think the old Henley course, wouldn't it? So starting from the other side of the island.
Are you cheating?
I've not got anything.
1827.
I'm going to hazard a guess it was Cambridge.
1829, I want to say.
Josh is completely right.
And I reckon Oxford won.
Okay. Yep.
You reckon we lost? Right. I think we won. We won.
That's right. You got it. Okay. In addition to this year, the boat race was not held during two other occasions. When was it not held?
I mean, more than 1 year though. So 1914 to 1918. And
two occasions.
1940 to 1945.
Yep, you got it. Okay, number 3. Name at least 3 well-known names or celebrities that have done the race.
I mean, Vasilis Ragoussis, Joshua Bugajski, and Ollie Cook.
I mean, besides you 3, that's a given. That's a given.
Dan Snow.
Define celebrity.
Dan Snow, the BBC
that's a big
historian.
Deal. If James Cracknell is an answer to these questions, it's not a question.
I did not count him.
Okay, good.
I did not count him.
Is that Vincent Cat?
Dan Snow's a good one, yeah, Josh, that's a good one.
Hugh Laurie's dad very famously did it and rode for GB.
I mean, I've already said Dan Snow, and I guess does that come under celebrity?
That counts as well.
He's on the TV.
I'm going to give it to you. You guys have gotten 3. So there's also Lord Snowden and the Winklevoss twins that I put.
Oh, Winklevoss.
The Winklevoss twins. Who are the Winklevoss twins?
Bitcoin billionaires, yeah, of course.
The Facebook guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4. How many wins does each team have?
Oh, are we on 82-ish?
We're behind by like 4, I think, now.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it 82-86 to Cambridge?
Okay, not quite. It's Cambridge 84, Oxford 80.
That's
the margin, right?
It was before you got the margin right. Number 5. What happened in 1877 in terrible weather that is still a huge point of contention amongst both teams?
Was it the draw? Could it be? What else are we thinking, guys?
I think it was the
where the line judge was drunk and he said it was a dead heat by 1 foot to Oxford or something, or dead heat to Oxford.
Yeah.
Were his words?
Well, they actually.
Is that? Yeah.
A dead heat to Oxford.
A dead heat was called. You got it. Number 6. How many times has at least one of the boats sunk during the race? And it sometimes has been rescheduled, but during the official race, at least one of the boats has sunk.
It's not that regular, is it? Did it used to be quite regular?
Because they used to be wooden.
I mean, I'm going to hazard a guess at like 6, maybe more, maybe 6 per side.
I'd guess around 10.
Do you reckon 10?
I've got 1, 2.
It's cheating.
3, I'd say. Maybe
should go with 7 then.
7?
I'm wondering whether it's less. 5.
I think 5 or 6, maybe 5.
Should be in the middle. 6. Let's say 6.
6, yeah, okay.
It's 6.
I think it's more. We'll go with 6.
It's 6.
It's 6.
I meant 6.
Nice, guys. Nice.
Number 7. In 2012, there were 4 major disruptions that even led to the race being restarted mid-race. What were they?
Oh, yeah, Trenton.
04. The oar snapping. Alex David.
But the race didn't get restarted after the oar snapping, though.
Alex Woods.
Sorry.
Oh, did each of these times the race got restarted, Whitney?
No, it was restarted one time.
Oh, yeah.
During this race.
Okay. Yeah. Alex Woods passing out, snapping of blades, Trenton. What is the fourth one?
You count the appeal at the end? The appealing?
You're close, actually. You're really close.
The lack of celebration at the end, right? Like the
that was another one, actually. I'd count that as 5, but yeah. Okay.
That's true, actually. Yeah, the awards thing.
I think we're missing one. The restart, which wasn't.
Oh, a slower crew won.
Short silence.
Okay, so what are you saying are the 4 then? The oar snapping?
Trenton.
Yeah. I mean, how many do you need here?
You guys are kind of, you're pretty close. Okay, so we have the Australian protester that swam out between the boats, the clashed oars, Alex passing out, and it was actually the first time a winner was declared without a winning time.
First time without a winning time. But so they didn't have a winning time. They
officially did not give Cambridge a winning time. Perfect. Okay. How many official race courses has the race been run on?
If it's more than 2, where else? Apart from Henley.
I'm not sure.
I think they reversed it maybe for a bit.
The boat race in the pub, no?
The what?
In the pub.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's maybe many an official boat race. Should we say 3?
I'm going to hazard a guess at 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 4.
Oh.
It's 4.
Wow.
So Henley, Westminster to Putney, Mortlake to Putney, and the current Putney to Chiswick.
Okay. Wow. I missed out.
Yeah.
I didn't know Westminster to Putney. That's cool.
Okay. Number 9. What coin is used for the coin toss?
I don't know. 50p?
It's a big one, isn't it? Like this.
Yeah. Did you say 50p? Coin? It's not a special coin.
I think it's like a really old special coin, yeah.
I think it is something.
I mean, can we say the special boat race coin?
Sure.
Yeah, go with that. Special
it's not right, but well, I guess kind of is. Okay. It's a gold sovereign from 1829.
Oh, so the special boat race.
We should steal it next time.
Okay, last one. Which station claims the most wins, Surrey or Middlesex?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Inside of the bend.
It is Surrey, 78 to 76.
Wow, that's closer than I thought. That's actually, wow, fair.
Yeah. And that's according to last year, obviously. So, okay. So last thing I want to know from you guys are your favorite memories off water and on water.
Oh, I think I know my on the water memory.
Go
Go
on.
I think
Okay, what's that?
It was after our final kind of like night, like squad kind of hair down night out before the boat race. I think it's maybe like 5 weeks out or something like that. Maybe 4 weeks out, maybe a bit closer. But I think a few people had quite a bit too much to drink the night before, and I think for the first session in the morning where we were doing weights, I think some people could barely start. If I remember correctly, Vas could barely make it round the track for the warm up. And then we were on the water at Caversham that afternoon, and we were doing some pieces. And Sean has all the records of all of the pieces that boats have done from the last kind of 20 years, pretty much since he's been there. And we did a piece, can't remember which, rate 20 or something. Oh, we did a couple of pieces that day, and
we did,
setting a couple of kind of OUBC records. And I think we were very surprised because the boat was crashing all over the place, and I'm pretty sure Vas was ready to just fall out of the boat at times, but it was fast.
Yeah, wouldn't be the best preparation. I don't think we could advise doing that, but yeah, no, that was a really good time. We had, I think it was 6 weeks to the race, and we had our last like blowout, and we were there, as a team, just absolutely, crushing it on the dance floor. I think that's, especially Ollie. I think he in particular has some sweet moves. I mean,
I do have some free moves.
So he may be a 3-seat, but the man can dance.
They
in a netball dress.
They very much go together.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that was great fun. Yeah, we did. I think we had like 3 2Ks at rate 20, and something like that. I think it was really good.
I think there was maybe on the water. I don't know why it's just not necessarily a favorite time of mine on the water, but it was one that really stuck with me when we were all in the 8 and we were at Caversham and going along, and Sean said, you have to be deliberately on time, and he said it in such a way that it really was very obvious that we were not anywhere close to being on time. And I think Vash, you went, oh, it's so sarcastic. It was exactly spot on. I just remember that being a particularly like poignant moment when we were. But I think off the water when we were all together, my favorite times was at Sunday night when we would get together at the pub, and we would talk about the week just gone and the week ahead, and we'd all have like dinner and a pint, and it was really fun.
And to wrap it up, does anybody have a reading from one of the ancient texts that you've brought with you?
I do like an old book as a historian. This one is from 1900 OUBC. It's dedicated in its dedication to the enthusiasts of the OUBC, which I imagine all of us include ourselves as. And
absolutely.
In the preface to say that perhaps a word should be said about the dedication of this book. During 36 years connection with the club, we have served so many good men and true, and we felt it would be invidious to single out any single one of the officers of the OUBC. To those who remember those ancient days, their initials will recall one of the keenest and heartiest boating men of our time. To others of later date, they may stand as representing first and foremost the lifelong friendships we all form on the river, and secondly, the men who, after all, are the backbone of Oxford.
Amen.
Amen to that.
That's beautiful. Well, you guys, thank you so much for your time. I know you're hungry and ready for some food, but yeah, absolutely. I know, don't get between boys and their food. I know how it is, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I will really look forward to having these two released the same week, the Oxford and Cambridge, and we'll see who won the most trivia questions. So I'm pretty excited about that. So thanks again. And for
Thanks
everyone
for
else.
putting up with us.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. You're welcome back anytime. We'll call Mike DeSanto and get him back and maybe do something with him. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week.
Okay. Cheers, boys.
Bye-bye.